Alright, hey guys. So I'm going to do another video with some notes, and then I'm going to give you something to work on after this. I apologize for all of the videos. It's just, we're actually getting down to the very ends of school, which is crazy. I think I'm only going to really see you guys maybe another like 11 class periods, which is insane. So I'm going to try and get through as much as possible, so at least, you know, we can learn some stuff before we get to the very end. So last class we did a little intro into the immune system. Today I want to talk about the difference between non-specific defense versus specific. So we're just going to look at non-specific defense. Again, your first responders immune system, the ones that don't have a direct thing to go up against. It's just everything that is maybe foreign in the body. So non-specific defenses, parts of the immune system that do not distinguish one infection from another. Again, this could be something that's fighting off a bacteria, a virus, it doesn't matter. It doesn't distinguish them. It's just going after something that has now broken your first line of defense. So examples of these would be like a physical barrier, like your skin, cellular chemical defenses, like white blood cells, inflammatory responses, which we'll talk about, and like fever. Having a fever is your body's way of responding to something foreign inside and how it's trying to get rid of it, right? So a fever can be a very good thing for you when you are sick. It's when it becomes out of control is the problem. So your first line of defense, very important. This is keeping pathogens from entering your body. So your first line is an actual physical barrier, right? So it's going to be things like the skin, mucous membranes, tears, wax in your ears, secretions from glands, and the acid in your stomach. So all of these things are kind of set forth to keep things like bacteria, viruses from entering the body in general, right? So again, like the skin, that's an actual barrier protecting your body from the outside world, which we learned more about in the beginning of this year. You have things like your tears. Tears contain, which we talked about before, antibacterial enzymes. So when your eyes get watery, that contains things that are fighting off any type of maybe microorganism trying to enter through the eyes. Earwax. It's gross, but it ends up, you know, again, trapping anything that's trying to go farther down into the ear canal, which would lead inside your sinuses of your head. So really, before we even get to any kind of cells, you've got a lot of first barriers that something has to get through, right? So that's why when we talk about something being very infectious and something kind of spreading around, the first thing that people say is like, okay, well, you got to make sure you're washing your hands, hand sanitizer, keeping your hands away, because you're trying to protect that first barrier, right? Because if something goes through the first barrier, then it's got a better chance of maybe then incubating itself, right? So this is your first line of defense. So again, physical barriers like the skin, bacteria proof as long as it's unbroken. Hair collects debris right before it enters body. Your nose hair, right? That's why you have hair in your nose, to help make sure that things that aren't supposed to be in your nose don't go there. Mucus, again, lines pretty much everything, every cavity, not only to make things more like movable, so that way things won't stick together, but the mucus also has to make sure that nothing kind of gets past it. It's sticky. And it also contains enzymes that help break down bacteria. And then acidic secretions in sebaceous glands, sweat glands. Your sweat, again, is more about keeping your body's temperature under control, but it also does contain a little tiny bit of enzymes that can help get rid of any kind of bacteria that may be growing on the underside of your armpit. I mean, think about it. It's a dark place, and moisture can gather there. So very great spot for something to incubate. So more cellular or chemical defense would be like phagocytosis, where you have things like neutrophils or macrophages, which is, they're kind of cool because a monocyte can turn into a macrophage, which is why I say formerly monocytes. Monocytes can move throughout the whole entire body and change, which is cool. They are going to engulf cells right through phagocytosis. So there's something kind of floating around. It got past the first barrier. Or a physical barrier. Now you have these cells that are going to try to engulf the problem and to get rid of it. Right, so it'll go through phagocytosis and then exocytosis, where it's going to push out the material or it's going to recycle that material. You also have cells called natural killer cells, which release these types of proteins that actually destroy cellular membranes of bacteria. So that's kind of cool. So you have natural killer cells. They sound kind of cool because it's called natural killer cell. But essentially you have like these little, again, fighters kind of floating around the body, waiting to kind of be summoned by something showing up the body that's not supposed to be there. This is just a diagram showing phagocytosis, right? Just actually engulfing a pathogen and then what it ends up doing to it. Very nice diagram, step by step. Some more cellular and chemical defenses. So what we talk about is something called a complement system. So it enhances or complements, right, the ability of antibodies and phagocytotic cells to clear debris. So this whole system is what is helping to circulate these immune cells around the body to protect you. So classical pathways are initiated by antigen antibody complexes, and then you have alternative ones which initiate immune defenses when a certain protein actually combines with a microbe. This gets a little bit more in depth with cell biology and how this works in these two pathways. So either one of these happens where you have a classical, meaning this happens all the time, where antibodies are summoned to take care of a problem, or the alternative, which sometimes happens where you actually have proteins that can combine with that microorganism and then help destroy it. All right. You also have interferons, and they're released by virus infected cells. And what's interesting is you have different cells that recognize them, which they're called alpha cells, beta cells, or gamma cells. We're not going to get super into those three, but it is kind of interesting to note that when something enters the body that's not supposed to be there, it does kind of alert whatever it happens to be in its host that it is there. So your body is very much well aware that there is something there. It's just, again, your cells can't come up and talk to you and tell you that, hey, by the way, we're infected with something and trying to fight it. So your body might recognize this, but you as yourself and self-conscious are not. Don't worry about this. We don't have to worry. This is just the combining of the C3b protein with microbes and how it breaks things down. Don't worry about that image. So let's just say you have something, there is a virus, right, like the one going around, and it has now gotten past the first line. Well, you have a second line of defense, which makes sense. So if your barriers fail you, you now have a second line. So this is to attack and kill pathogens that get past the first one, like phagocytes, the white blood cells. Your body is going to go through things like swelling, fever. It's going to create antimicrobial proteins, which just means proteins to help fight microorganisms. So your body is doing these physical things in order to now help get rid of it. Again, fevers is like a big one. If you have a fever, it's your body raising its temperature, trying to kill whatever is inside of it, right? Which is kind of cool. So inflammatory response, so this promotes repair of damaged tissue. So the reason why things become inflamed, that means that you're going to have an increased flow of blood, which then also means an increased flow of white blood cells, to help clean and to help heal damaged tissue because of that virus or bacteria, right? So you have different things like you have histamines being created, which communicate with the brain and the release of things and responding to specifically allergic reactions. So histamines go with allergic reactions. And then you also have prostaglandins, which help increase blood flow, again, during inflammation. So when you do get hurt and you see things like it's red or it feels hot or it's swelling or you're in a little bit of pain, that is because your body is pretty much signaling, hey, we need a lot more blood flow in this particular spot because it needs to be healed and we need to get rid of the infection. So kind of what I said, development of inflammation, damage occurs, blood vessels are near, the wound expand. There's something called a mast cell. They release the histamines or other chemicals. They engulf and destroy the bacteria. The white blood cells release chemical agents that cause the temperature of the body to rise, hence your fever. The area becomes red and swollen due to the increased blood flow. So all of these things are really signs that your body's fighting something, right? A lot of times when we're not feeling well, we try and play doctor and you try and feel the lymph nodes that are sitting right underneath like your chin up towards like the upper part of your neck. And if you feel like if those are swollen, that's a clue that your body is now currently fighting something. So having a fever, having an area that might be swollen or red, is signs that your body is currently attacking something, right? It's gathering more blood and it is attacking something. So fever, again, maintenance of a higher than normal body temperature, activation of things like leukocytes, macrophages, and priogens, which is how the hypothalamus understands how to raise the heat. All right, so the hypothalamus is key into controlling the body's temperature, and it is triggered by there being a very large production of those priogens. Priogens are released because of leukocytes and macrophages, and it tells the hypothalamus that, hey, we're down here fighting something, we need you to turn up the heat a little bit. So it turns up that heat, helping and hoping to kill or denature bacteria, right? To undo the protein of the bacteria, which is kind of cool. It's when this process becomes unmanageable. So fevers are great until your body doesn't have a good job of cooling itself back down, right? Having too high of a temperature, not only you're going to denature protein, you're now going to cause things like organ failure. Nope. We don't need the last part. So yes. So one more thing also about this slide, because I feel like I went through it pretty fast, is leukocytes and macrophages are just more enhanced white blood cells, which are releasing those priogens. So kind of like with the endocrine system, what you're seeing a lot in the immune system as well is a trigger for everything. So the body's being attacked, leukocytes and macrophages enter the scene, there's a lot of stuff it has to take care of, so then they create priogens, which then triggers the hypothalamus to raise the temperature. So you see this trickle of events that has to happen before we get to the actual fever, right? So your body has to go through these steps. Just like with the endocrine system where certain hormones release another one, which releases another one, it's the same idea. All right? All right, cool. So along with this, there is something that will be posted that I'll have you guys work on. Miss you guys, and I hope you are having a great Thursday. All right, and happy late Cinco de Mayo.